I was watching a video yesterday on, I think it was about summer transfer recruitment at United, and I just found myself thinking, like I think a lot of the time, I absolutely can't stand this ownership. I hate the fact that we have the owners that we have. The chancers, bluffers, blaggers, liars, amateur. Um, they've got no class. I don't think they particularly know what they're doing. They spend so much time trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, when if they just put some energy into actually applying some of the bullshit that doesn't end up coming to fruition, if they did it, we'd actually be in a much better spot. But they don't deserve the privilege of being the owners of a club like Manchester United. And I don't think it's said enough. Without doubt, for me, if Luis Enrique was to talk to a Man United board that consisted of decent people, people with pedigree in the game, best in class director of football, best in class chief executive, with owners who were hell bent on making United great again, who had more disposable income, were trying to get money into the club, serious owners. You know when you've got a club that's whether they're serious owners or not. If that was the case, other than the fact maybe he might not want to come to the Premier League, or maybe he doesn't speak English, or things like that, I think he'd come to United. I don't think he has an aversion against Manchester United, but as it stands with this ownership, there's absolutely no chance he would come to Man United. If he was desperate to come to the Premier League, he wouldn't come to Man United because of this ownership structure. Because he would look at it and think, who are these people? I'm a manager of pedigree. You have no pedigree. You have no history in the game. You have no blueprint for success. The club doesn't have a clear vision. And also, he's a smart guy. So he would think to himself, I'm a winner. I want to be competing for Premier Leagues, and I want to be competing at the back end of the Champions League, and of course in the two domestic cup competitions as well. Season in, season out. To do that, you need 2 players for every position. United are 9 players away from that. And I'm not talking about 9 players over the next 4 transfer windows. I'm talking 9 players very, very quickly to make the team competitive at the top end of the Premier League, and being able to do that in the other competitions as well. And he's smart enough to look at the club and look at the last few years. People say success leaves crumbs, so does failure, and think to himself, I'm not getting that. So in terms of best in class, to appoint a best in class manager, the owners are the reason we won't get one. Let's look then at, if you're a builder of something, the likes of Glasner, Iraola, De Zerbi, even looking at maybe a Nagelsmann who's not necessarily got any history of building things, but would need the chance to be able to build something, they'd scupper that as well. Because a builder of something needs a lot of money. They need expert operators to get a prolific amount of players through the door, which we haven't got those expert operators. And you need a clear vision and time and patience. And as the Amorim experiment proved, we haven't got that. So best in class, owners scupper us. Builders, project builders if you like, for want of a better expression, I don't like that word project, but project builders, owners scupper us. Even what's lying right beneath our nose right now, the one we're probably going to go for, a Carrick, someone who might not have a great pedigree in the game, but fits the club. One of our own, mould one of your own. If that was the ethos we were going for with a manager, they scupper that as well. Because someone like that needs a clear structure around them to support him. Needs a lot of the same things a project builder would need. The reason Arteta has done pretty well at Arsenal over a period of time is that they handpicked him, they put a structure in place they thought would suit him, they've got expert operators in key positions at the club, and over a period of time they've spent a lot of money on players he wants, they've let go of players he doesn't want, and they've put an awful lot into him and his ideas and principles and values of how he wants to do things marry together really nicely with that board and that structure. Carrick's principles and values would marry very well together with what Manchester United have been in the past and what I think a lot of United fans would want for the future. But he hasn't got that structure around him. So the board again would be culpable for the reason that it just won't work. It depends what the success criteria for work is. My success criteria for work, as in it's not worked under Carrick, is you win Premier Leagues or you get close to winning Premier Leagues, and that's not going to happen. So the board, the owners, are responsible for us basically not being able to get the full gambit of managers, but the full range of different managers that are out there. Some of them we can't get because of the board, because those people will be put off by the board. Some of them the board can't buy out of clubs. The project builders, they wouldn't give the time, patience, and don't have the expert operators in position that would be needed to give that its best possible chance. And it's the same with moulding one of our own. So they scupper everything. I saw a video yesterday that was sort of suggesting that the only real clear targets United have got at the moment for the summer are Elliot Anderson and a left winger, the identity of which we're not sure on. It was a reputable person, I think it was Ben Jacobs, and he went on to say United won't pivot from Elliot Anderson. He is their main target, and until he becomes obvious that he's not going to come to United, they're not looking at any other targets. I don't take that as gospel truth, but it wouldn't surprise me. But what happens if, well, City could put us out of our misery with Elliot Anderson because they could just go and get him. They're quite efficient, they're quite quick. So they could get it, they could get him, we can't get him, and then we have to go to another target. But United could spend, no exaggeration, they could spend 2 months flirting with the idea, deciding if they're going to do it, putting little proposals on the table, then moving away, having a week to think about things, coming back with a different proposal. We saw it all last summer with Mbumo. 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 7-8 weeks it took for him to sign Mbumo. Brentford had a price they wanted United to pay. 7 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it was, went by. Open goal. He only wanted to join United, and we ended up paying more than what we would have paid if we did it in week one, working on one target for that whole time. This is a World Cup summer that's coming up, which makes it even more difficult. So we're going to be let off by the fact that City will probably just sign him. But what if it gets 4, 5, 6 weeks into that process and then he goes to City or he goes somewhere else or it doesn't happen? Then it's start again with someone else and you've got another 6, 7 weeks negotiating with a club. In that case, on a not replacement, but on an alternative. In that regard, nothing's really changed from John Murtagh, Richard Arnold, Ed Woodward, and basically Glazer people running the show on recruitment, doing one thing at a time. No top clubs work on one thing at a time. It's absurd. And if that's true, I'm sure we'll get more than 2 signings, by the way, but that the only 2 clear targets at the moment are not just a midfielder and a left winger, it's a very specific midfielder who's highly likely to go somewhere else and a left winger. That is really concerning. Really concerning. Because we need so much more than that. But when you look at the financials, we owe £500 million in transfer fees. We're £1.3 billion in debt. We're sailing close to the wind, although it's a bit better with FFP. I think we have been sailing very close to the wind with FFP, and we still have to be a little bit careful. You look at all that, and it kind of makes sense that we're not going to have the volume of players coming in that we need. But why is that? Why will we not get the players that we need? Why are we sailing close to the wind with FFP? The two things go hand in hand. The reason we're sailing close to the wind with FFP is the obscene amount of debt that we have attached to us as a club because of the Glazers and the damage that does. But also how poorly we've been run over a period of time. And I hear people that defend INEOS say, well, that's not their fault. It's not their fault that United got troubles with FFP. Don't put that on them. INEOS decided they were going to team up with the Glazers. And when that happened, they knew very well every single financial detail. They knew very well they wouldn't be able to operate a best-in-class football operation because it was going to be hampered by the Glazers still being there, but also the legacy damage done by the Glazers. INEOS knew that. It's not like it's a shock to them. It comes back to this football first thing that really irritated me, that Omar Barada said in his statement regarding the financial results. We continue to operate a football first mentality or ethos or something along those lines. I think, don't insult my intelligence, mate. If you were football first as a group of people, what you'd have done when you teamed up with the Glazers or you were proposing to do that, if you were football first, you'd have said, you know that £1.2 billion that we're giving you for strategic investment to Manchester United, that I know you're going to put in your pocket, we are not going to do this deal unless we have something in writing to say some of that gets invested back into the club and some of it pays off some of the debt, so that we have a really clear opportunity to try and properly solve this problem. That, you know, if you're football first, you do that. You don't come in and cut half the workforce and punish fans by putting season ticket prices up and putting prices up in general by quite a significant amount, by the way. Included in those financial results was the fact that we'd played 10 games at home in the same period that we played 15 the previous year, and yet the matchday revenue is the same. So you do the maths. They've significantly upped the price for the fans to basically pay for the failure of the year before through not having enough home games. So I go back to it. People that would say, well, it's not their fault that the FFP things are there. No. But they decided to come in and spout things like, we're going to be best in class, we're going to be challenging again within 3 years, we're going to make Man United great again, we're going to be football first, as Barada claims that we are being. You're not, and you knew you couldn't be. Those financials, you know, are a false reading, because they're based on cost cutting and putting prices up, which you can only really do both of those two things to the degree that INEOS have done them. You can only really do them and see a big result from that once. It's almost like, I'll use an analogy, going for a health check, and prior to the health check, for 3 or 4 weeks, you don't have any beer, you just drink water, you don't even drink any caffeine, you eat like, just lean meats and vegetables for 3-4 weeks before you go. You do nothing that's going to scupper this health check. My dad does this. And then you go, and you have the health check, and it's like your blood pressure's fine, your cholesterol's fine, your kidneys, your liver, everything's perfect. Keep doing what you're doing. Now, don't get me wrong, if there was something worse at play, 3 or 4 weeks wouldn't make any difference, but my dad does this all the time. He blitzes it for 3 or 4 weeks, he goes, he has a health check, he comes back like that. I told you nothing was wrong with me, I'm fine, and gets back on the beer and not all the things he normally would do. It's a bit like that. They've manufactured a result through very specific actions that they're not going to repeat. Oh, I don't think they're going to repeat. You cut any more of the workforce, no one's going to be left. When INEOS came in, my point would be, if you can't get United back to the very top, maybe because of reasons that are not necessarily your fault, because of legacy damage, as I said, from the Glazers, but if you can't do what needs to be done to get to Manchester United back to the top, you shouldn't have come in the first place. But that's not their criteria for success. That's not their motivation to be here. Like I've said, they're chancers, not just INEOS, the Glazers as well. They're chancers, they're blaggers, they're bullshitters, they're liars. And I'm just getting fed up with people apologising for them and people just... So for example, Amorim, I hear people say, well, they weren't to know it wasn't going to work out with Amorim. You know, they're not crystal ball readers. They got a good manager in. Just didn't work out. Well, when he came in, one of three things had to happen. One, the players that were there immediately were able to adapt to his system and it was going to work. Two, it took him a little bit of time, but over a period of time, they were able to adapt to his system and it would work. Or three, it's apparent after maybe a few months that isn't going to happen, and when that doesn't happen, you have to put a lot of money and time into it. I think what they believed was that he was going to come in as a good young manager and everything was going to work pretty quickly. And I think they were shocked when that didn't happen and they didn't have a plan B. There was no foresight, and when things started to go wrong, there was no one with the skills to positively react to it either. And there's no money to positively react to it. They never intended on giving him the money that would be necessary for that particular manager to be successful at United. He couldn't do it with what was there. That was quite clear. They obviously thought he could. They got that wrong. They didn't have the foresight to pick the right person. There's people at that club that are paid a lot of money to have that foresight. But those people are not best in class and are not good enough at their job, and they failed. And we excuse it. I'm not excusing it. It was a terrible appointment given what was around him, both above him and below him. Just going back to the financials, it's something I meant to say the other day. Swedish Ramble, who's on Twitter, often breaks down the finances of the club and in a way that's very thorough and probably easier to understand than maybe other financial people would how other financial people would report it. And I think it was him. The BBC Sport article actually quoted it as Swiss Ramble. I'm pretty sure it's Swedish Ramble, unless it's two different people with similar names. So I'm assuming it's Swedish Ramble. Had said that in the build-up to those financial results coming out, United were third in the debt league. At least we're third in that. We're going to could be third in the Premier League tomorrow, but we're third in the debt league as well. Second only in terms of the most amount of debt to Everton and Spurs. I don't know if that's in Europe and the world, but obviously it would be in the Premier League because they're the two teams in the Premier League with the most amount of debt. We're third with, I think, almost as much debt as them. The difference being those two clubs have just moved into new stadium. Well, Spurs moved into a new stadium a while ago. Everton have just moved into a new stadium. So they have, understandably, put quite a bit of debt against their name because of the cost of moving into a new stadium. United are third on that list, and we want to move into a stadium that's going to cost potentially £3 billion to spend. It's mind-blowing. Genuinely mind-blowing. And again, most fans just don't say a dicky bird about it. It's all right, we've got Carrick in. Things are going all right now, so let's just keep quiet and hope everything, shove it under the carpet and hopefully everything gets better. On a wing and a prayer, because that's what it is. On a wing and a prayer. Now, there's some United fans that would say they'd rather struggle and for it to stay as it is than sell out to a state. I've got to respect the opinion of those people. I'm competitive. I want to win. If I see ownership, management, players, whole club, no pun intended, united behind the idea of a set of principles, an identity, a character, an ethos that is representative of something I can believe in, and we don't quite achieve the highs of what we've achieved before, but I see intent, then that's good enough. I don't see that with these at all. But there's some people who would say I'd rather finish regularly between 6th and 10th most seasons if it means we don't have state ownership. If you want to compete, and I do want us to compete, second time I've said this in a week, Roy Keane said you've got to shake hands with the devil sometimes. Part of modern football is that mega rich owners tend to come from the Middle East, and we're competing, or wanting to compete apparently, or I want us to compete with Man City. And by the way, what has happened with the 115 charges? Some people now say it's 134, 175. They're just totting up and totting up and totting up. It wasn't about 18 months ago when we were told this is now an ongoing thing and we're going to be coming to, it's going to come to public information, public knowledge, of the result of this quite soon. 18 months ago. This is what you're up against. A year ago in January, they spent I think probably almost a record amount for a January transfer window. They spent shitloads of money in the summer, and they've just spent again this January. It's almost like they're still flirting the rules and I would say sailing very close to the wind of the rules at least now, whilst all these charges are hanging over them. They don't give a shit. So that's what we've got to compete against. We've got to compete against owners who are finding loopholes to get money into clubs, whilst our owners take money out of our club and cost us tens of millions of pounds in debt interest every year. So if you want to compete, part of modern football is shake hands with the devil. Fair play to people that say, right, well, I'd rather not do that. Maybe on that, maybe modern football is finished in terms of for people like me who've watched something certainly a lot more innocent and a lot more energetic and volatile and close to the bone. As when I was growing up, it was like that. You look now and say, VAR shit. The atmosphere is sterile. There's no fan culture, or not enough fan culture. Fans are being priced out, not just at United, everywhere. Players don't seem to have the same personality. There's not as many mavericks anymore. Maybe modern football in general isn't particularly good, and that's why you're getting people moving and watching lower league and non-league football. I get that. I see the attraction. Me and my mate before Christmas were planning on going to New Mills because I don't live too far away from there, and the game got called off. We weren't to know that. We turned up and we didn't realise, but we had a quick look around. Probably only holds a few hundred people, but little bar there behind one of the goals. You could get a beer. I've seen clips on Twitter of seems like a decent atmosphere. You could just come and go really easily. You could take the kids. It's not going to cost a bomb. It's 10 minutes from where I live. If you were driving, you could just park right outside and go. Yeah, all of that's appealing compared to the nightmare that it is to get in and out of Old Trafford and all of the stress that goes with that and the prices and etc. But I love Man United. And modern football has moved us away from things that I love, but Man United as a club are not represented by people who represent me. The issue we've got with the owners that we've got and the stranglehold that they've got is that it's not even as if, when Abramovich got chucked out there was regulations then as to how much Chelsea could go for, or how much a buyer would have to buy the club for. So therefore, if that happened to United, you might get someone who come in who buys it for what it's worth, which is about 2.53 billion quid. And then those people might not have the finances, they might not be from the Middle East, they might be a more morally sound group of people that could take the club forward, and that would appease perhaps most sections of our fan base, because it's not the Glazers, but it's not a Middle East consortium or something like that. The fact is, the Glazers have got a stranglehold on it. So the problem is, the club's worth between 2.5 and 3 billion pounds, but they'll insist on something daft like 7 or 8 to sell it now, probably. Well, the only people that have got that kind of money are consortiums from the Middle East, and or mega rich moguls who probably are just as corrupt and horrific as people perceive Middle Eastern consortiums are. As I've said before, I don't necessarily think that's right, that judgment is so set in stone, but people have the right to their opinions. So they've got that stranglehold on us. But combined together, the Glazers and INEOS, as I say, they're just chances. And they've been really good in terms of chancing their arm at doing what they've done and so far getting away with it. But that's all they are. There's nothing real about them. There's nothing authentic about them. There's nothing that makes you believe them. They're liars. They're con artists. They're running a club. I've said it before. It's a racketeering operation dressed up as a football ownership. It's why I started the channel. And as much as things on the pitch at the moment are going well, and I'm glad they are, it's despite the owners, not because of them. And moving forward, and I go back to the Elliot Anderson and a left winger thing, it's not sustainable, because we need more players and we need better players, and to get that we need expert operators, and we haven't got them, and we don't have the intent, and we don't have the tenacity and the motivation to do what needs to be done, because we're owned by chancers, blaggers, liars, bullshitters. So I think it's important to separate. On the pitch, good, going well at the moment, happy with that. Off the pitch, don't ever lose sight, or I won't ever lose sight of this travesty that is that these people are allowed to own our football club, and also the shame of the fact that fans won't do more about it. Glazers out.